Arcade Heroes.
Greetings, it's Adam with ArcadeHeroes.com, and going to cover some news, or follow-up news on the recent live stream I did of the Notice Me Game Jam 2022 by Game Maker Studio 2 and Opera GX. And so this was a competition among indie games to find some games that would be worthy of being put into a real coin-operated arcade cabinet. And they received over 300 entries, according to the website here, but they only put up 10 for a vote. And on that recent live stream, I went ahead and played through them all to see which ones would actually work in an arcade environment. And unfortunately, there were some that really weren't arcade-like coin-operated arcade. Yeah, they fit with the genre of what is generally thought of as arcade. Like if you go onto Steam and type in arcade and pull up that genre, then those things fit with that sort of thing. But they're still made, a lot of them, from what I experienced, were still made with that more mentality of being played on a console and not for what you would find in a real-life arcade. And so the voting was up to the people as well as some judges, and out of the 10, 5 received different placements and also received money for winning these places. And so yesterday, April 11th, they announced the winners, the top 5, and so let's go through those really quick and see who's going to be put into their arcade cabinet. So starting with 5th place is actually one of them that I really thought would work, was among my top picks. You can only pick one, but this one, it was pretty good, and so I think it should have placed a little higher, but at least it still got one of the top 5, and that was Sylvester versus Lil Beezy. So a shoot-'em-up game that would, again, need some adjustment on the controls, because in this it used a mouse, and most likely the multi-game cabinet that they would be using for this would be using a joystick. But it really worked out. It had a lot of elements that work great for a coin-operated arcade game, and so that got 5th place. And then there was Skeleton Punchers. And this was a kind of a beat-em-up game, almost an arena-style beat-em-up game where different enemies would spawn and you would beat the living daylights out of them. My only main problem with this one were the sprites were a little bit tiny, and so I would have liked some bigger ones there. The aesthetic also, it's fine for PC indie games, but in an arcade you really need to do more to stand out and grab attention, as if a game looks too old, even though that's its aesthetic, in an arcade it may not grab that attention to bring people in. But it was still a fun game, and so that got 4th place. I guess I should also be mentioning the creators of this, although it is on the screen here. Chaz Carter for Sylvester versus Lil Beezy, and Moopty Chunk for Skeleton Punchers. And so for 3rd place, we have Monsters Await at Raven Estate, and so this was designed by Nikolai GD, Jeremy Lowther, and Gizmo199, and so it was kind of a horror-themed twin-stick shooter-style game, although it seemed to be designed with a single stick in mind. It's just, I don't know exactly how the game cabinet would be created, and obviously if you're having multiple games on it and just one of them is a twin stick shooter, that's a little difficult, and so I believe they were adapting for that. Same problem has existed like on the XR Arcadia, where you have games like Lightning Knights, where those were originally twin stick shooters, but they had to adjust it to be a single stick, and seems like they came up with a decent solution. It's just, it still would have been better, in my view, to have proper twin stick control for that. And then second place was All You Can Take by Kim Seitner of No Fuel Games. And this is a game where you're a thief running into a house and grabbing everything you can and shoving it into a van. And again, this one wasn't my top. It was fun, but again, for an arcade environment, it needed to be a little snappier on the pacing and everything. But it won second place, which also won good money. And a fun little concept. I think if it had borrowed a little more of the gameplay ideas from the very classic Bagman, which is a bit obscure, I get it, almost nobody knows that game anymore. It's from 1982, so it's 40 years old. But, you know, that kind of had a premise of you nabbing gold and getting to a certain place for it. But at least in this one, when I was playing it, I had a little bit of trouble with some of the heavier items. I don't know if I missed a mechanic or a control or something. But it just had a little bit too much explanation at the beginning, and so it needs to move you along to be able to work in an arcade environment. And then for first place, we have Moonleap by Goose Select. Hopefully I pronounced that right. Of course, if I sound strange, it's because I still have a cough from the flu that I had recently, so apologies about that. But Moonleap was one that I liked. It was in my top 5 of games that I would have voted for, or again, could only vote for one. But this game was a little bit like Solomon's Key, which was a game by Tecmo back in 1986, and you were kind of a moon person, but the interesting mechanic about it is every time you would jump, it would change something about the level. Generally, that you would get spikes popping up on certain squares, certain tiles, and so you had to plan out or strategize how you would jump to collect the objects to clear the level and move on to the next stage. And so this one was a pretty good arcade, coin-op arcade style game, and again, just needed a few minor tweaks, but glad to see that one like that got to the top place. Now, the one that I think would fit the arcade style the best was one that did not get into the top 5, and that was called High Moon, where it was a Western themed game. Very interesting graphics and not fully 2D, kind of a pseudo 3D, but that one for me definitely held up really well. And same with Disco Hell Mayhem, where that needed just a little bit of tweaking, but also had a kind of a Qbert mechanic meets electric yo-yo mechanic. Again, I'm throwing out all these obscure arcade games that a lot of people may not be familiar with. But overall, those are the top 5 games from the Notice Me Game Jam. So I'll be keeping my eye on this to see when they announce an arcade cabinet for these to be grabbed and maybe go into real arcades out there. But thanks for watching, and congratulations to all the winners. And I do hope that there might be some minor adjustments made to make them a little more arcade-like. But if not, maybe you'll still find these out there at certain arcades that like to pick up indie games. But again, thanks for watching. We'll catch you on the next video.